First of all, welcome everyone. It's a huge privilege and honor to be able to talk to you today about these really important issues, and very inspiring to hear your backstories and how your activism has been helping us to think about a better world and move towards a better world for some of the most marginalized people in the world. So the first question for all of you is, what have been your key takeaways from the conference? Okay, so that's a question for everyone, all right? So what have been your key takeaways from the conference? Okay, and then I've got a specific question for each of you, okay? So maybe you could respond to both the general and your own question. Okay, so Nestori, starting with you. What does educational justice look like for refugees, especially in the current context? Okay, that's your question, all right? So maybe you should just go ahead and answer it, please.
Thank you very much. As I have said, my name is Nestori. I was born in Democratic Republic of Congo. And to begin with, I can say my takeaway to this conference was the diversity and the engaging, how the conference has been. I think since day one, I've attended several discussions, presentations, of which I've learned a lot. And I've got very crucial lessons that I think if well applied, they can really help in supporting the education. And it's good that most of them have been touching the teachers and the education, so which really relate to the field. So back to my question, how does what does education justice look like for the refugees? I think most of us, when we hear about refugees, we think of very fast of the short-term solutions. We think about food, shelter, but it's very important to understand that some of the refugees have known the camps as their only home. Some who are born there. Personally, I've lived in the camp for almost 10 years. And the experience in the camp is not so easy. I came when I've attained education, which in 2014, I was employed as a teacher to teach and give knowledge to the other refugees in the refugee camp. And when you are teaching in the refugee camp, you face a lot of challenges. Looking at the huge number of students who have lost almost everything, but they only have hope to education. Over 130 students per class, and you only have 10 textbooks to make sure that they serve all of them. So as a teacher, what magic can you use? And these are students, the children, like everybody else, who are born and believe that they have dreams, become somebody in future. And they look up to you with the few resources you have for them to study. But sometimes it's quite challenging that many of our students, some of them are not absorbed in education because our schools cannot accommodate all of them. According to 2021-22 report, only 6% of refugees can access tertiary education. So what happens to 94 of the refugees. That means their lives and dreams, should they be forgotten? Should we assume that it is business as usual when refugees' education is not looked into? I think we cannot say that there is education justice if refugee education is not in the picture. We have to do something that even those in the camps, they have right to education. And education is a fundamental human right. But due to the situations they find themselves in, they are not able to access. So I think those are the few things I can share. And we have, all of us, refugees just need a platform, needs opportunities, needs support. And I think those who have been supported through education, they have had so much that they have achieved in life. Personally, I'm here not because of my name, but I'm here because I went to school. So refugees do not want just to be on the menu. They want to be on the agenda. They want to sit on the table where decisions are being made. I think to ask for education is not too much to ask. I think the education agenda should not wait anymore, and we should act now. Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating, Nestori, and really powerful. Thank you. You made the point so clearly. Michelle, your question now. So you got the big question about your main takeaways from the conference, but then your question, your special question is, in your experience as part of the Youth for Education in Emergencies panel, you've been advocating globally for education in emergencies, including how education can support social and environmental justice. What have been some of the highs and lows you've experienced in your advocacy efforts?
Okay, thank you. So for my key takeaways, I would like to make a short demonstration. So if you believe that if it wasn't for education, you wouldn't be in this room, please raise your hand. So it seems like it's almost everyone. And why I've chosen education as my key takeaway, it's because I've seen education is important and it takes you places that you never imagined. And that's what I wish for all the marginalized young people and young women like myself. And as an advocate, that's what I'm trying to do, that they get the education they need so that they can be in places like this ones. So for my highs and lows as a youth advocate when it comes to education emergencies, I'll start with the highs. I've managed to meet some of the victims, some of the young people, some of the young women that were victims of their education being robbed off by emergency crisis, and they've been displaced, they've lost their homes, they've lost their chance to education. And I've got to sit down with them in person, and I've got to actually listen to what they have to say. I no longer advocate for them based on assumptions or based on what I read on the news or what I see. It's because I've heard their voices, and I've managed to go in places whereby I try and be their voice to make sure that every world leader, every person can get to hear what they want and what they need, not just basing on, oh, well, maybe they need this, oh, well, maybe they need that, but to actually tell them what they want. And I believe they've actually listened. I'm sure the UK government knows us by name now. They've managed to hear us talking to them about funding education in emergencies. And I've managed to actually pitched for digitalization in marginalized areas, because when COVID came, everyone turned to online lessons. And I thought of the young women and the children that were in marginalized areas and some in the cities. If their parents can't even afford 3 basic meals, what more asking them to buy a laptop to have internet access? And it's sad, but I managed to be given a platform where I pitched for a youth center that could actually enable them to access online lessons, to access the internet and gadgets to use so that they were not left behind. And I've seen them appreciating the simple thank you, the simple smile they give you. It takes a long way. And when it comes to the laws of advocating for education emergencies, having to face the reality that I might not be able to save them all, because for some, it could be too late. But the fact that I might be able to help 1 or 2 of them or 3 of them, it's okay. But I wish you could actually advocate for all of them. And I've seen young women that were exploited. They've become teen moms before the time. They've gone to prostitution. Potential young people have gone to drug abuse because they gave in to the social ills. And this was because their safe place, which was schools, it was normal. And, you know, instead of us having 20, I'll refer to my own profession, instead of having 20 social workers, we now have 10 social workers because the other 10 were affected by crisis. And it's not their fault, but that's what happened. And it's very sad. So I would say those are my highs and lows when it comes to advocating.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yeah. That's so important. You can hear these things, read about these things in the paper, but to hear your own lived experience of it is really powerful. Thank you for that. Okay, Sarah, you're up next. So you got your general question, and then you got your special question is, from your experience in joining forces with youth networks to advocate for education in emergencies, how are young people, including yourselves, around the world seeking environmental and social justice through education?
Thank you. To answer my first question, which is the takeaway so far since I started this conference on Tuesday, I think for me, it's really been the nexus, or will I say the interconnectedness of all the goals around the world, all the issues around the world. We've all come from different walks of life. We've all come from like different places. With our own issues, with our own challenges, but we're all in the same room today, not saying that, oh, I'm African, I'm European, I'm Asian. We've all come together to ensure to see that these issues are being accomplished. And I think that it will really be unfair to say that we have to prioritize one challenge over the other. I think that every challenge is relevant to everybody based on their own countries and based on their own context. And I think for me so far, what I've been able to see and take away is that there is power in partnership. There is power in coming together, lending our voices and just doing what we can to make the world a more equal place for everybody. And as a young person, I really do feel privileged and honored to be able to lend my voice to this very important discourse at this time. And to answer my question, which is around what youth networks and young people, including myself, have been doing to ensure that environmental and social justice is achieved through education, I think I would like to say that it's really been more of a progressive approach for us. And when I say progressive approach, it is really about thinking about innovative and inclusive ways where we can be able to lend our voices to the issues that mostly affect us, and also use our voices and the issues that we see around us to be able to empower other people as well, because it is possible that many people do not even understand the effect of the, the crisis and the situations that they find themselves in. But as young people, every now and then, we are constantly speaking up. We're constantly letting people know that there is power in getting educated. There is power in, ensuring that people have a safe learning environment. There is power in ensuring that people have a lot of awareness and knowledge around climate education and how it affects young people. And one of the key ways that we have been able to do this is through advocacy and policy engagement. At the Education Cannot Wait high-level financing conference that held in Geneva, which I was able to attend, we could see that it brought a lot of young people from different parts of the world to come and speak about the issues that mostly affect them. And one thing that really stood out for me then was the platform that we gave to these young people, because one thing I've been able to understand that it is one thing for you to hear about the stories, and it is another thing for you to give these people who have been affected a platform to be able to speak about these things. I really feel like that is a compelling way to advocate for these issues. And at the end of this conference, we're able to come up with 4 key action points that we wanted the stakeholders and the decision makers to prioritize in their manifestos and in their policies. And of course, the most important being funding education in emergency situations. But there's also the aspect of ensuring that more young people are involved in, policy making and decision-making processes that mostly affect them, and also prioritizing policy and refugee education in emergency situations, and also that accountability and accessibility, because many times we hear about these policies being made, but you don't really see young people in the room where they're able to ask questions to these decision makers to follow up that where are we at this? You've promised to do this, but we are not seeing the progress. So we actually prioritized that we wanted to have more accessibility to decision makers and stakeholders to be able to prioritize education in emergencies. And then the final one being that we wanted to see that there was more policies around children welfare and protection during education in emergencies, because many times we also talk around like we want more people to go into schools, but we forget like the babies, we forget the mothers who probably have been affected by this crisis and they can no longer fend for their babies. So we also wanted that there is enough welfare and support for these young people. And as a member of the Youth for EIE panel, which is the education in emergencies, we've also been able to use a lot of social media campaign, where we've done a lot of campaign around prioritizing education in Lebanon. We've also done a lot of letter handings, where we recently went to Downing Street to hand in a letter signed by a lot of youth advocates, where we wanted the UK government to prioritize funding in emergencies in the party manifestos. Also, we were able to speak to Minister Andrew Mitchell, who is part of the FCDO, to just get their idea around why they've recently launched a campaign around prioritizing girls' education, because many times people do these things, but it's also important to know what the motivation behind that is, and we're able to be a part of that. And when we talk about education, education goes beyond the 4 walls of a classroom. There are other things that are really important when we speak about education. We talk about the quality of education, we talk about the accessibility, we talk about the sustainability of these new policies and processes that we are bringing into play. So I think basically for young people, what we've basically been doing is bringing ourselves together, partnering together, and seeing like there is so much power in unity. Because I come from Nigeria, Michelle comes from Zimbabwe. We also have other people on the panel who come from places like Indonesia, Malawi, and when we all come together, we all have our own different issues. We all have our own different challenges that we are facing in our countries, but we always ensure that we are lending our voices as much as we can. And one of the reasons why we are able to see some progress, at least, is because we have been able to speak up about these issues. We've been able to create awareness. And in the same way, that is also empowering other younger people to have that confidence to be able to speak up. And I'm not here to say that we've been able to achieve all of these things. There is still so much work to be done. But I'm really proud that as a young person, I've been given a platform like this to be able to speak for other younger generations, because I believe that there is so much importance in having young people in platforms like this, because we are the future of tomorrow. So we really need to be involved in the kind of future that we want to see tomorrow. Thank you.
Brilliant, Sarah. That's so articulate. And I think, you know, Sally, what you've heard is a very clear set of messages coming over from the youth there. Clearly, there's a very strong agenda, very clear messaging, unlike some of the statements we might hear from some of our politicians. But anyway, your question, Sally, is, from your perspective, working as the lead on gender with the Global Partnership for Education, how can global approaches and institutions support environmental and social justice at a country and community level? So you've heard it from the youth. How do you respond in your position? And well, before we get to that though, what have been your main takeaways?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Leon. I was just going to say, I was really glad that I was being considered an activist, actually, but I think I've now been put back in my box as working for a global international organization. But it's been a pleasure being on the panel with these guys. So looking forward to this. So yeah, in terms of my takeaway, I mean, obviously, you know, this rich experience of bringing together, you know, some of us that maybe have been around a bit too long, but then a great new bunch of researchers, activists, practitioners. That's always brilliant. And I think this outfit has been particularly good at bringing that together, actually. And I'll come on to that in a moment. I think just sort of, I guess, three quick things. And based just on the sessions that I attended, because obviously it's difficult to be everywhere. I think the first is just, you know, it's great. We've now got this sort of body of evidence about this interlinkage between climate, environment, and education. But I think there is a responsibility that comes with that, and to do it in the right way. And there's also a real risk of doing it in the wrong way. And I was struck by, actually, it's something I'm not going to plagiarize. It's something my former colleague Colin Bangay from FCDO talks about a lot, and it really resonated with me, was this focus that we have on sort of climate change alone, and not just climate change and environment, really risks, particularly when we're working when there's such inequality between carbon footprints between low income and high income countries. It can leave young people, particularly in low income environments, feeling very powerless. Actually, their carbon footprint is very small, and in order to make an impact up there is huge. And actually, even I think to a certain extent in more developed countries, it can leave young people feeling very unable to make much change, and it's all too big. But I think this focus on bringing in the environment, and also seeing young people as real change makers in looking at forestation, all these other issues, and tangible. And I think we heard a bit of that coming out of some of the sessions that really spoke to me and reminded me about framing and making sure that we do this well. And I think that sort of fits in a little bit to, I heard about a fantastic program at Sounded, the Photo Voices program around Lake Chad, which worked with young people across 4 different countries, giving them cameras, because lots of environmental shocks were happening, but there wasn't the language to be able to understand it. And for them to be agencies in that. And there was a quote there that really stuck, which was, how do you represent this if you don't include us? And I get that segues a little bit into the second takeaway, which is around, and believe me, I've been to a number of UCFI conferences, but it really struck me, this one, you know, for the grassroots voice coming out so much more, and it's really represented in this panel today. And I think that was really powerful. And it wasn't just that sort of physical presence, but it was also about the way the sort of research agenda is shifting, talking about power, looking at sort of the decolonization, all these issues. Again, this is something that's developing, and it's really come out strongly. And I think the whole climate injustice debate really helps to us, because we recognize those different injustices in position, place, and time. I'm just quoting from another session I went to. I'm dropping all these sessions. And then just the final point, sorry, I will be quick, is just on gender, because obviously that's that's my key interest at the moment and has been for a number of years. I think, again, this conference has really shown if you really make an effort and have a distinctive strand. There's been a great number of sessions on gender, from longitudinal studies from Somalia going through to really looking at sort of technical gender in systems transformative approaches. And I just think going forward, it's just that classic thing of ensuring that we're mainstreaming as well. So there were a number of sessions where I was thinking, oh, it would have been good to seen the gender perspective on this a little bit, so bringing that together. But it's been great. Sorry, I'm going to go on to the question now. Okay. Yeah. So on. I mean, it follows through actually to some of the points I was saying. So look, I'm not. I'm not an expert on climate and education. I'm not an academic anymore. I touched my toe in that water, and it didn't last that long. So most of my career, I've been working for bilateral and now more recently, sort of multilateral institutions, and I guess trying to make positive change, manoeuvring and being compromised by bureaucracy and political dynamics. And I'm sure, Leon, you could say that more articulately in an academic way. But so just sort of thinking through what the responsibility is on international processes and institutions. And I think it's not rocket science, but I think it's about, creating that space for change and that room for maneuver in context and not shutting it down. And I think that's very hard to do, but it's a lot. But I do think we need to be thoughtful and mindful in doing that. And I just wanted to throw out just a couple of examples just from my organization, the Global Partnership for Education now, a couple of initiatives which I hope are trying to do that. I'm not saying we're doing it, but it's trying to do that. The first is this new paper that we've been working on gender equality, which I've been shamelessly marketing throughout this conference. But the reason for that is because it sets out, it's not a new strategy, but it does really emphasize that the Global Partnership for Education is a partnership. Yes, it's a fund, but it's governed by constituencies of ministers of education, of CSOs, of multilaterals and bilaterals, and the accountability at country level is also the same. And in order to make sure that we really address gender inequality, it's not just a technical exercise, it's it's about power dynamics. And so the new paper really sets out the importance of bringing in organizations, expertise, young people who understand the real issues in the context, and we can incentivize that because it's part of the requirement of the grant process. So I think there's one way that we can try and nudge that, and do look at the paper. We're moving beyond technical solutions. It's around social norms and stereotypes. And then secondly, and I'll finish, climate smart education systems is a new paper produced. It was a different team, but I think what's most powerful of that is the third outcome is climate justice. And that, I think, from a sort of a relatively powerful big institution saying this is not just a technical process, this is about power and power relationships. It may not be perfect, you may disagree with the contents in there, but I think having that as a one outcome is a nod and creates spaces to recognize that we need to bring in voices. So I'm going to finish there. I hope it didn't go on too long, but thank you for bringing me into this panel. I feel I'm a bit of an old mum here, but it's been a pleasure. So,
well, speaking as an old dad. Speaking as an old dad, I certainly wouldn't say that. I think between the four of you, you've really raised a lot of really profound issues and questions and challenges. I think you've given us a good idea of the kind of direction that activism is going in at the moment, and the issues that are affecting young people. And Sally, in your response, how the GPE is responding to that. So that's hugely useful. Okay, well, over to you guys. We've heard four very stimulating inputs there. And now it's your opportunity to ask the panelists some questions. Maybe get a thought off your chest as well. Please keep it brief, but we'd be very much like to hear from members of the audience. So if you've got a question for the panelists, please raise your hand now. Okay.
Tikly. Thank you so much. I can't even explain how excited that you're here. Thank you so much for sharing everything. As someone who's been working on youth peace and security, in particular, I'm very passionate about young people being at the table. And Sarah, what you said about young people being future leaders, that is true. I think what we also need to recognize is that young people are leaders of today, and the absolutely incredible work that young people around the world have been doing in some of the most sensitive and complex settings. It's amazing. My question as someone who's been working with young people to you is, what does it mean to you? Like, how do you imagine that, you know, gatekeepers, policymakers, governments need to engage with you? So sorry, I'm trying to make sense of this, but what does it look to you, how they need to engage with you? What are the steps? What are the methods, for example? And, you know, Nestori, it's probably to you too, because a lot of refugees are children and young people. So how do we engage them so their voices are heard? And Sally, then to you is, what are the opportunities from your perspective for us to actually hear the voices and to censor the voices of children and young people? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. So how do we mobilize youth voices, and how do we make sure we hear them? So maybe we can just go around, and maybe we'll start this time with you, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. So from my own experience, I'd say in order for the world leaders, in order for people to engage with young people, to feel that we are there on the table, there are a lot of youth initiatives out there. There are a number of them, and if you approach any organizations, because we are advocating for one thing, which is our own well-being, and which is prioritizing us as young people. If you reach out to any single youth initiative, I'm sure the word will spread, like it spreads quickly, and we work together. It doesn't matter which youth initiative is going for it, but trust me, it has all the voices, because we are interlinked and we want the same thing. So we always, it's an important thing to have you invite a young person, even if it's one person. We feel we are represented. We believe that if you do something without us, it's not for us. So as long as we have a representative, we are glad.
Right, thank you. And Sarah?
So I think for me, what I wrote down here would be support and partnership, because I think that young people really do need a chance. And I definitely, you know, understand that many times we tend to see it from like the big picture, but I think there is also like so much power that starts from the grassroots level. You know, I come from Nigeria, a country where you hardly ever find the leaders very accountable to people in that sense. And, you know, the question that I always have all the time is, you know, if we're able to start this partnership and support at, you know, the grassroots level, I believe that it really does go a long way in, you know, the wider, you know, global world. And what I'm trying to say really is this, you know, when we even go back to our own, you know, private lives, how much are we willing to even give young people around us a chance? You know, a young person says something that I think things shouldn't be done like this. I think, you know, I'm not getting as much attention in my school. My teacher is not really helping me. As a teacher in that class, what are you really doing about it? Because I don't think it really starts like at the big scene. It really starts at the grassroots level. So I think like one way for young people to really feel like that power of is also, you know, ensuring that in our own private lives or in our own, like anywhere at all, in a very small space, that we are giving them that voice, we're amplifying their voice. I work in the Right Respecting Schools Awards team, where we get a lot of calls, you know, and queries about young people saying that I don't feel like I'm being paid much attention to in schools. And sometimes we want to ask the teachers, like, what are you really doing about it? And I feel like there is so much power in amplifying the voice of children and young people before it gets to really like the global scene. Because for me, the reason why I've been able to have this platform is because back in Nigeria, I was willing to like volunteer with like small charities, and it wasn't really like they had a big name, but they were willing to give me a chance to hear my issues. And from then on, I've been able to build, and you know, I've been able to get that platform where I can be able to speak to even ministers and members of the parliament. So yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. And the story, and then Sally.
On the refugee perspective, we realized also the same challenges as you asked. In 2017, we said, as refugees, what can we do to address the challenges that we are seeing, that the education system cannot absorb everybody. And also those who are finishing, for example, high school, there are no enough opportunities to carry all of them to the tertiary level. So we came up with an idea. We formed we said, why can't we do something? Then we formed the CBO called the Solidarity Initiative for Refugees, where we empower young boys and girls with the digital skills. And it's been running for almost 3 years now. And we have really seen a lot of impact for the young boys and girls. Every boys and girls today, those out of school, that now they are being trained how to use technology. And through the skills that they have attained through technology, now they have found something to do to be self-reliant. And we said we are not going to sit down and pity, that we have to come up with something. And I believe that is something we have seen actually working, and the youth are very much engaged. And by now, almost we have done 600 youth, both boys and girls, and the trainings runs every 3 months in different, there's leadership, there's digital skills and all that. So we have seen a great transformation, and we have seen the girls and boys understanding their value in the society. We have seen them being self-reliant and using the skills, especially in technology, to do something for their lives. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks so much. Sally.
Great, yeah, no, great answers. I mean, I guess there's different layers to this. I mean, it's certainly on the global level, I've certainly seen it's really great. Like most big organizations will have, like we have GPE youth advocates, there's UNHCR youth advocates, and I think that's a really great movement. And I've certainly witnessed that the voice of the young person speaking to the minister or speaking has a much bigger impact than actually. So I think you know, the opportunities and continuing that, and I think that's been a really, really positive trend. I mean, I think at national level, I think my understanding is, I think Sierra Leone is testing out a youth panel, is looking at each policy, and I guess there's scope. Obviously, we don't have that in this country, but but I just wanted to come back to your point about the sort of starting at the sort of, you know, at the sort of grassroots level, or even actually starting in schools. And I think it's coming back to actually, again, a session I've just come from on Young Lives that showed some really interesting data about girls. So I think it's social efficacy, or someone will correct me in the right sort of term, in terms of those sort of social emotional skills, that they've showed that actually, even though girls were doing better academically, those skills were actually, once they hit adolescence, just really dropped. And so I think it does come into actually a broader debate about sort of empowerment agency for young people, and thinking of education in that way, and particularly on gender, because it's great you've had individuals have this opportunity, but we want all young people to come out of school to feel they may not be as, amazing and do be on global panels, but they will be able to then be part of, be empowered to be part of helping make the future in their local community as well.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, we've got a question there and a question there and a question there. Okay, let's start at the back there, in the middle there. You wouldn't? Thank you. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Hello. Hi, Kristen Mucho from Save the Children. A real honor and privilege to be able to listen to you all. So thank you so much. And I think this is a great initiative. I think the concept of agency has struck me throughout this event, and just thinking about that at different levels. And you clearly demonstrate that for us. And I was reflecting on the opening remarks around how do we find a place of optimism, right, in the face of what we're doing. And I'd love to hear from each of you, what is your optimistic hope driver that motivates your agency to continue to do what you feel is important and what is needed? Thank you.
Right, thanks. Yeah, that's a really good question. And of course, there's so much pessimism around, and when people engage with the social media and the media, it's just disaster everywhere. How do you keep that hope alive? So that's a good question. Let's take one or two more. Yes. Like to.
Tizendra Ferrali from UCL. My question is very simple, without any background. Do you have aspirations to join politics? If yes, why? And if no, why not? Sally, you're welcome to answer that question as well.
Those days are gone.
Okay. So I think we've got two excellent questions there. We did have a third one there. Is it a brief one? Okay.
The question's brief. I don't know about the answers.
Good.
Okay, I'm Joshua Musk. I'm from Geneva Global. When I was your age, 1,000 years ago, and looking at folks with white beards and white hair or no hair like me, I tended to think that people had outgrown their utility. And I'm wondering from the youth up there, and Sally, you can count yourself in, what do you think we just don't understand? Not just about youth, but about approach to bringing social and environmental justice through education. And what do you think we're doing wrong as our generation? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot to get your teeth into there. So just to recap, there's a question about pessimism and hope. There's a question about, do you want to be a politician? There's a question about what have we done wrong, our generation. So that should keep you busy for a while. All right, let's go around the other way around this time, if you don't mind the story, starting with you.
Yeah. What is the motivation? I would like to begin with that. What motivates us is the impact we are able to see to the young, to the beneficiaries, or for the refugees. The motivation, the big motivation I've seen is how impactful the approach has been for the students. I think that is one of the things that where you saw somebody was about to giving up in life, and whereby he didn't, or she never saw like there is light at the end of the tunnel, but out of the interventions you did, that you're able to see them realizing that, oh, I still have a future, that not all is lost yet, that I can still achieve my dreams. So I think that's what keeps us motivating, and also the stories that keeps on coming after the interventions. On the motivation still, I would like to quote somebody who said, Malcolm X, said education is the passport to the future, that for tomorrow belongs those who prepare for it today. I believe the experience around the refugees is quite lively, that they have lost, they didn't come with anything in their hands when they are coming to the camps. And some of them knew that maybe I will be here for 2 weeks or 1 month, maybe my country will be good again and I turn back. But some of them have been there for 20 years. So imagine if that girl or boy came to the camp when she was 10, for example, and now she's plus 20 years, that is 30. So what happens to her life? What happens to her future if we don't do something today in terms of empowering her to access education? So I think that's really a big motivation. And I always move high in comparison with my example, that as others said, that education can take you far. It's only a takeaway that you can go with. I'm sure that is about desperation to become politician. I think others will answer that.
Make a great politician.
Yeah,
No.
that was a politician's answer, by the way. No, seriously though, would you like to be could you see your future in politics?
No, personally, no. But I'm a teacher. I'm a trained teacher of history and economics. So I've done a little bit about international relations in terms of political science, but I'm not that aspiring to be one.
Okay,
Yeah.
and on the third question, how can you use your political skills to tell our generation how we've messed up so badly? Or really, you know, what have we done? What do you think? What has been your inheritance from past generations and how, as an older generation, what do you think we need to reflect on now?
I think to answer his question is that he framed it as, what are we not understanding? I will answer it in that perspective. We are not understanding on how to react fast. We sometimes understand from the research that we have done, we have seen where the problem is, but we delay in acting. And when the problem was affecting 2 people this year, and you act after 5 years, you'll find it has moved from 2 people to 100 people. So I think if we could take the actions as soon as we realize the problem, can really help. So,
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nestori. Thank you for that. Sally.
Maybe, do you want to ask the?
All right. Yeah. Okay. So Sarah.
So
You don't have to respond to all of the, just whatever comes to mind, really.
Okay. So I think I would start from the last question, which is, what do I think that the previous generation has done wrong? I think, simply put, I think we've just really gotten comfortable, really, that we have actually failed to prepare well for the future. Just as Nestori just said, that we fail to act now, but I think we also fail to prepare for the future. I feel like COVID also really exposed how we got like so comfortable, and we are actually just now trying to solve the issues that we could have actually like maybe put some policies in place for the future. And I think like there are also some traditionally deep-rooted values and cultures that so many people are still holding on to. If you go to some parts of northern Nigeria, they still believe in like girl-child marriages, and we are in a changing world. We are supposed to be very adaptable to, you know, the issues and the challenges that will definitely happen. So I think the major area would be that we have actually failed to prepare well for the future, because I think right now I'm not hoping that there would be another COVID or another issue, but if we're being asked that right now, if something happens maybe in 6 months' time, do we actually really have the capacity to help the people who might actually be affected by the issues that would happen? So I think, yeah, that's one of the areas that we probably need to think well around. And I think the first question, which is around what my hope would be, I think currently there are over 222 million school-age children whose education have been affected by crisis. And I think like that is a really large number. And in as much as I know that we cannot exactly solve everything today, but I think my hope would be that probably in the coming years that we do not have these numbers anymore, because I think from when I was in probably at my final year in my undergrad, I've been hearing a lot about the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, and we're currently in 2023, and it seems like COVID was really like a drawback. So I think my hope is that we are able to plan ahead and properly prepare and have policies in place that would help us to really adapt to like any challenge or issues that we face. And do I want to go into politics? I mean, I want to be a policymaker, probably not a president or something, but I want to like, you know, be able to lend my voice to influence policies that I believe that will be really sustainable and for the greater good. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you see a future, in our political structures and systems for bringing about change. Okay, yeah, I think you'd be a great policymaker personally. Okay. Michelle, to you.
Okay, I'll start off with what motivates me. I think what I would say motivates me is having to see young women in marginalized areas being empowered, being educated, being given a second chance in life. Teen moms that have so much potential. I want the next time we have this conference, not you to hear from me, but to hear from a young woman or a young teen mom coming from a rural area there in Zimbabwe that you would never imagine. I want them to have the exposure that I had. That's what I wish for them. So that motivates me. And do I want to be a politician? Well, my family says I should become one, but I don't. Speaking from a Zimbabwean context, I don't think I want to become a politician. I don't want to sell dreams. I don't want to give people hope that I will not be able to act on, or give them promises that I won't be able to keep, because I'm sure I won't sleep at night. So I enjoy what I do right now as a young advocate, and to motivate other young women to become advocates or to be empowered. I don't want to use my voice through becoming a politician. Maybe I will change some way. I'm still 23, maybe I'll change my mind. Then when it comes to what I think has been going, the bias or what has been done wrong, I think it's because when you see young people, when we go for conferences, what I've noticed is you are expected to sit and listen to what they have to say, but sometimes when it comes to my turn, we know they have busy schedules. They simply walk out, and I'm left with no one to listen to what I have to say. I think that has been very wrong, and it needs to be acted on. And the other thing is, I feel like there's been more of people have been basing more on assumptions rather than reality. And I hope that someday we are able to listen to people and to actually sit them down and not just have someone come up with a report and say, okay, we'll work best on the report. No, I don't want it to be that way. And what I also think has been done wrong is education. I don't believe it's only academics. That's something that I've noticed. Education can be through life skills training. Not everyone is gifted in reading books and going to graduation. No, you can just maximize your potential in something that you're very passionate about. And I believe that's a way of education. That's a way of empowerment. as long as you're able to stay out of the social, as a young person, as long as you're able to stay away from the social ills because you took your chances on something that's going to keep you going, and it's helping you break the generational cycle of poverty in your family. I think that's how it's supposed to be. Let's not define education as just academics. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's really powerful. Thank you. Yeah. And Sally, last but not least.
Well, I mean, I think most of those questions probably I've passed the particular vote, certainly on the politician one. But I mean, I think, you know, it's, and I mean this authentically, because sometimes I have to be honest, you know, when you've been working in a field for a while, it is sometimes hard. And I've been joking with a few of my old colleagues here that you end up saying, well, we've tried that one, didn't work very well. And I think what does genuinely give me hope is as young as you guys, actually, and that's true, because, you know, it's just so lovely to hear that future positivity about knowing there's huge challenges, but actually really wanting to make change and a difference in the world. It's just really inspiring, and that's, you know, it's genuine. I think that's the thing that gives me hope for the future.
Yeah. So position aside, what do you think as an older generation we should be doing at this point?
In relation to
the kinds of issues and challenges that we've been hearing about today.
Yeah,
to the
so
fact that as a generation we've kind of messed up.
So I really, well, yeah, I mean, I think we shouldn't sort of be too self-flagellate. I mean, I think there's, you know, I mean, there's some, I mean, certainly on climate, it's just really clear. And that was that great session I went to on climate and justice, looking through the time. And, you know, we knew this stuff in 1938, and we knew, again, reminded in 19, and still nothing was done. So I think, you know, there's responsibility there to listen, you know, and that was really clear. I really listened to your point about busy schedules and sort of, you know, I mean, these are small things, but, you know, you can all hear yourselves. Yes, I've done that, you know, didn't have time, didn't value the fact that the person was younger and had something to say. So just on that, I think that's really important. I mean, on the acting fast, I mean, that's a challenge to all of us donors, I think. I can't promise on that, but I think it's a really powerful message. And you know, there's lots of us in the room, and so listen to that. But maybe just finally on the education, not just academic, and I think that's, you know, that's such a powerful message. And I fully agree, and we've heard a lot about that in the conference. So, but I mean, others in the audience might have something more profound to offer, but that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, would anyone like to offer a response? Yes.
Question. Hi, my name is Wendy. I'm from Humboldt University, and I want to apologize, but I'm going to put you in trouble. Because if you realize the answer was, do you want to be a politician? And the answer was no, never. Because I don't want to give false promises. So the question will be that if you ask me, I would say the same thing. No, I don't want to. So how can we change that? Because that is a problem. We don't want to be politicians. So the politicians are this group of people that are giving this false hope. So what do you think how can we change that? What will be the solutions? I think there is one of the important things for the education is be creative. So how can we change this small thing that it's really a huge thing? And I'm so sorry.
Okay. Right. Okay, we're coming to near the end of our allotted time, so it just remains for me to thank you. But before I do that, I wonder if we could just go around and just have one more concluding thought from each of you, a little takeaway present for each of us to think about on our journeys home.
Okay, I could start.
Go for it.
So I think I'm going to take your question as a takeaway. something that I'm going to work on and consider to see what would motivate me or some other person like me who doesn't want to become a politician, to see what makes it better. So I think the next time I'll come back with an answer.
Excellent response. Okay, Sarah.
I think I would just like to say, and just talk to everyone in the room really, and say, if you ever find yourself in a position where you have a very rare opportunity to talk to young people, please stay and talk to them. Hear their voices, amplify what they have to say. And even if you don't have a solution at the time, just make them know that you are listening to them, because there is so much power when we know that we're being listened to, even if like we don't really get any response. But the fact that we know that someone has listened to us and taking what we've said into account. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Sally.
You know, I was just sort of mulling there that it's interesting that our last question was on politics, and we've spent the whole of the conference looking at research and detail, and then it, you know, but no, great comments. And I think, but again, that comes back to the themes. I guess my takeaway is, yeah, remembering those dynamics. And I really would just like to say, I think this, you know, let's move forward from this conference and take that learning and bring that diversity and bring more young voices and take that pledge ourselves on the listening, because that's something that's within our power as the advocate community. So I think that would just be my very small thought. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think for me, participating in such kind of conference or platform has been so great, as other my colleagues said. There's a lot what we can learn from here, and there's a lot that I've taken to me. And I think that if young people can be given more of these platforms, they can really help them to build and to understand what is around the world. Sometimes in our culture, they say that a child who does not move or travel, he or she thinks that the mother cooks well. But if we give exposure to our young people, our young boys and girls, I think they are the change for tomorrow. They're the future for tomorrow. If things maybe they are not going well today, it's because there's some kind of mistakes that have been done before. There is a generation that we never paid attention to. But if we bring them up now, we give them the platform, we give them the voice to understand how is the world going, I'm sure they are able to prepare for good future tomorrow. That could be my takeaway. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all so much. And can we hear it for the panel, please? Can we hear it for Michelle? Sarah? Sally? For Nestori. Thank you all very much. And now I'd like to hand over to Susie, make some closing remarks.
Wow, it's quite hard to stand and follow such an amazing panel with such inspirational answers to so many really quite challenging questions. I just want to really spend a few minutes just with some closing remarks, trying to bring together some of the threads across the conference. To start with a few statistics, because I quite like data for those of you who know me. This year, we welcomed a record just over 800 delegates, either online or here in Oxford over the last 3 days. Delegates have come from 60 countries, with 2/3 of delegates being women and nearly 10% being students. In order to widen access, the conference team specifically planned the online day and included several hybrid sessions each day of the conference here in Oxford. And in addition, the trustees awarded 32 financial bursaries to delegates who otherwise would not have been able to attend. As we've discussed the theme of education for social and environmental justice, diversity, sustainability, and responsibility over this last week, I wonder what for you have been the things that have most inspired or challenged you. We've asked that question to the panel about their takeaways. For some of you, maybe it's the fact that you've enjoyed having the time and space to discuss and to debate in sessions or over coffee or online. For others, perhaps it's been the opportunity to deepen your knowledge in a particular sub-theme that's been an important part. For still others, perhaps one of the keynote speakers has been a particular inspiration. And for many of us, I think it's fair to say that being able to come together and meet face to face for the first time in 4 years has felt like a return to a bit of normality after COVID. But I hope for all of us that we've learned new things, that we've been challenged to expand our view of what education for social and environmental justice currently looks like and what it could look like in the future. In these closing remarks, I'm going to pull together some of the key threads from the conference. So starting with the plenary speakers. Last week, Dr. Vandana Shiva challenged us to look beyond the main view of currency being money and accumulation or greed, and instead to think about the law of giving and considering alternative currencies that include compassion and love and service. She reminded us of the principle of stewardship in education and in our care for each other and for the planet. Earlier this week, Dr. Maria Balarin helped us to think both conceptually and practically about what justice might look like in education, urging us to reclaim and strengthen the epistemic core of education. In this way, she posited that we might be hopeful pessimists, believing that education does have a role to play in contributing to equality and to racial, gender, and environmental justice. Yesterday, Professor Nidhi Singhal asked us to reimagine inclusive education through a framework that focuses on 3 Rs: rights, resources, and research. Within this, she implored us to think holistically about the education of all children, to ensure we are listening to the voices of children and communities in the global South, and to avoid categorizing children with disabilities as a homogeneous group. She also reminded us of the importance of thinking about intersectionality. Just in this last hour and a half, we've heard such rich discussion, sort of pithy takeaways, and some real challenges from this panel of youth and older experts. We've heard about activism, not just about the ivory towers of research and practice. We've heard about education not just being about academics. We've heard about education as the only hope for many refugee youth. There was a nice expression, there is power in partnership. And actually this conference has very much reflected that. So then moving on to the jam boards and the takeaways people have added to the boards just outside the room here. I've just sort of picked a few statements that people have written. The importance of collaboration with multiple stakeholders to collect comprehensive data and effectively use it, and to coordinate interventions. Being aware that there can be a blind assumption that EdTech is the solution. the potential of supporting multilingual classrooms and teaching to increase learning outcomes, as well as considering soft skills such as self-confidence, self-esteem, and teamwork. Redistribution and recognition as key drivers for justice in education. The significance of critical virtual exchanges as an approach to address polarization of society, global power inequities, and just generally bringing diverse people together. The need to overcome power in terms of aid and publishing hierarchies and include all voices in decision-making. The importance of comparable data across different contexts, particularly in areas where there are a lot of research gaps, such as education in emergencies and early childhood development. A reminder that when the underlying factors restraining education are taken care of, there will be improvement, not just in access, but also in quality and in the lives of people. And then an important and open question that came up in the decolonization sub-theme. We cannot undo what's been done, but how can we address the legacies, rebalance power, and ensure it never happens again? And on this subject, a small group of us yesterday took a short walk at the end of the day to the statue of Cecil Rhodes at Oriel College just down the road. We spent some time discussing his legacy, also discussing the place, both literally and figuratively, that statues should play in both reminding us of the past and enabling robust debate about what a different future looks like. This gave way to wider discussion on the importance of creating spaces where debate and disagreement can take place, rather than the increasing tendency in our society to either silence dissenting voices or to retreat into our comfort zones where we only speak to people who hold the same beliefs and have similar values. But this is an exclusionary approach that then categorizes people as us and them. Ensuring we have diversity in our interactions may be uncomfortable, may be deeply uncomfortable, but it's likely to help us to think more holistically about the role that education can play in contributing to a more socially and environmentally just future. I hope that over this conference, there have been ideas and discussions that have felt uncomfortable, as this is where we have the most potential to learn and to grow. UCFIT as an organization is more than this biennial conference. We're a forum for sharing and debating evidence. This includes a number of online, hybrid, or in-person events each year, and also a very active online presence through our website and social media, where we post around 100 blogs on a range of topics. Shameless plug, if your organization is not a member of UCFIT, but would like to join, please do consider applying and getting more involved. In this way, we can continue to ensure that UCFIT activities remain relevant to researchers, to practitioners, and to policymakers. So as I formally close this conference, I'm reminded of a quote I had on my wall as a student nearly 30 years ago. And that quote was, "All that is needed for evil to triumph is that good people do nothing." And I think our closing panel today has reminded us about the importance of activism and taking action. And for me, an important way to measure the success of this conference, of course, we can look at evidence as we do as people involved in this space, but a really important way to measure that success is to look forward at how the concepts, challenges, and evidence that we've been discussing this week might lead to change practices in the day-to-day work we do in our institutions and at the interface between research and practice. So as we leave this building, or as we're disconnecting from Zoom, I want to encourage each of us to take what has provoked us this week, to meditate on it deeply, and to commit to doing something, however small, to apply it in our work. In this way, I think both individually and collectively, we can play a role in ensuring that education does contribute to build a more socially and environmentally just world. So thank you for coming this week. Thank you to everyone who's made this event such a success, and travel safely as you go home.